If you work in health tech or B2B healthcare, you know there are so many opportunities that are pay to play. But are they worth it? Do they really matter? Is that all your strategy should be? And how do you incorporate that into a strategy that actually works? I'm going to talk about it all in this episode, and I think you're going to get a lot of value out of that, especially if you've been struggling with balancing the paid versus organic marketing and sales approach. Welcome back to another episode of Amplified. I'm your host, Courtney Gallster, digital entrepreneur, agency owner, and B2B marketer extraordinaire. I work with my team in the healthcare and health tech space, among other spaces, and we help companies like yours scale in a way that creates marketing that supports the sales process. So let's talk about kind of one of the biggest elephants in the room, which is paid marketing in health tech. Yes, first of all, anything in this space has some component of pay to play. And honestly, there's just so much money playing around in the health tech and healthcare spaces that you have to expect that in order to get in front of the right people, you're going to have to spend a little bit of money to be where those people are. But that doesn't mean that your whole strategy should be paid. Let's talk a little bit about that. So anything in the live event space. Live events are huge in this industry and they really are well attended. You can really drill down. There's so many events that you can really drill down to only attending events where your target market is going to appear. And there's a lot of options for what you can possibly pay for. I have clients that spend $15,000 for sponsored events. I have clients that spend $4,000 for sponsored events. I have clients that are looking at spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on sponsored events this year. And it really depends on one, who you're targeting, two, how much money you have in the bank, and three, how much you need to bootstrap. So let's dive into what that actually means for you. You need a comprehensive strategy. Your strategy can't solely rely on the paid space. So I always recommend that our clients start with a bootstrap option. And I'm the queen of bootstrap, so I'm always going to recommend a bootstrap option to start. Bootstrap doesn't mean crap. It means high quality, visually pleasing marketing materials that are designed to support your sales process directly, but they lean more heavily on the organic digital side than on the paid in-person side. That is scalable depending on what your needs are, depending on where your audience is. But I always recommend starting with that digital option because it's more cost effective, because it's more tailored, because it's not mass market. And even if you're going to events that are smaller and niche, you're still hitting a big market of people. So it's a little more one-to-one when you can work in this digital space. It's a lot more time consuming though, let's be honest. So having a mix of different opportunities is really important to your brand. So when I talk about bootstrapping and using digital tools, where I would typically start for anyone in this space, if you know me, you know what I'm going to say already. It's get on LinkedIn, get active on LinkedIn with posting, liking, commenting, connecting, get active in messaging on LinkedIn, invite people to virtual coffees, invite them to in-person coffees, and get consistent with it. That consistency component on LinkedIn is so important to your overall success. Anything in professional services and B2B performs really well in my experience on LinkedIn. So that is the top service that we actually sell on behalf of our agency, Amplified Marketing. But it's also the number one tool that I recommend to anyone in the space because it is a relatively low cost, relatively low learning curve place where you can really get in front of people that are qualified to buy your product. So that's one thing that I look at. The second thing that I always say is to start building a database. You need an email system. You need somewhere to email your people on a regular and consistent basis, to let them know about industry updates, to let them know about what you're doing, to let them know when you have webinars. All of these things can be communicated via email. Email is still the number one way to stay actively in front of your audience, but email really is only effective if you're consistently emailing out valuable information with a minimal amount of self-promoting information. And what I mean by that is you should be staying in front of your audience regularly by just giving them good old value articles or updates or things of use to them, video content, webinars, things like that. A newsletter is a really great place for you to focus your efforts, mostly because building a database is, again, it's low cost. It's information that you already have. It's a place where you can deliver value add content that enhances their business or enhances their life. You can provide a minimal amount of promotional material, but when you consistently get in front of your audience with value add content, you start to build a relationship with them. You start to build a know, like, and trust factor. And that ultimately contributes to growing your business, growing your brand, making sales, all of those things. So those are just two things that I look at. Those are two very common things: email newsletter, regular old drip campaigns on email, LinkedIn / other social media. There's lots of other things that you can do, but those are three really quick examples of common solutions we recommend to people that are looking to scale in a way that's going to give them a direct impact on the sales process. How do you choose those tactics is the next question you're going to ask me. I know that's on your mind. I personally like to map out the sales process. So sit down with your sales team, sit down with your stakeholders, map out what that sales process looks like. You can draw little boxes on a piece of paper. In fact, I have a sales map that we commonly use with clients. It's very rudimentary. If you would like a copy of it, feel free to email me. My email's in the show notes. But we use that to just as a visual aid to walk through the process of first meeting someone and then every step in the process that we currently have, mapping that out to the point that until the point that they actually become a client. Arthur, my adult Doberman, decided to join us here today. So those are, once you map that out, then you can identify what you're missing. You can look at that map and more clearly see visually what that process looks like for you. So are there steps in the sales process you're missing? That's something that's commonly identified when we go through this process. But also, where are the best points for marketing touches that are going to take some of the onus off of the sales team and really give them some additional tools and support to move those prospects along in the sales process. The second thing to think about when you're considering a paid versus organic or a paid in-person versus organic digital strategy is that anytime you are doing something paid in the live space, you need a organic digital strategy to back that up. So that means promoting the event that you're going to be at prior to the event, whether that's a booth that you're hosting, a sponsorship you have, you're just attending a show, you're speaking at an event, anything that you're doing, you should know whether or not you're going to send out emails before. Now that could go in two different directions for you. You could be getting a list from the show and you're going to email attendees prior to, or it could be you don't have a list and you're going to email the people in your database. So those are two different directions that are commonly used by my team when we are looking at creating that strategy around shows. You can post, preferably on LinkedIn, but on any of your social channels that you're going to be there. And depending on the size and scope of the show, sometimes for us, that means we're going to post once. Sometimes that means we're going to post weekly for 4 to 6 weeks. It really just depends on how big the show is and how big our investment is. It changes a little bit depending on each event. And then you also need a follow-up plan. So what are you doing at the show that's going to capture people's attention and help them engage with you? How are you going to follow up with those individuals afterward? How are you going to follow up with people you didn't meet at the show? Those are all important things to think about. And then how are you going to re-maximize that? So if you had a speaking event, are you going to be able to take a recording of that event and distribute it to your network? Are you going to be able to use that on your website, your YouTube, your social? Are you going to be able to take photos while you're at the event just to say, hey, we were here and here's what we talked about. Here are some of the conversations we had. Here are some FAQs we identified. This is all value add content that you can take and repurpose for your newsletter, for your email, for your social media campaigns. And typically when you're doing these live events when you're doing events in the live space, it's a great opportunity to get little video snippets, to get photos of people, and content that uses photos and videos of real people always performs better than content that is static and doesn't include real people in the visual. So if you can capture some of that type of content, that's another opportunity for you to re-promote both in your newsletter and on email and on your social media feed. So then the last thing, and this is something that we have been seeing more and more of over the past few months, especially in the health tech space, is looking for ways to mimic those results that you're getting in the live space, especially for speaking events and virtual webinars. How can you mimic that in a less expensive space? So how can you partner with other complementary services or products in your space so that you can bring your audiences together for your own webinar? So you don't always have to pay $5,000 or $10,000 for a sponsored webinar with a partner that has a huge audience and instead leverage what you already have. Obviously, something like that hinges on you actually having your own audience to play with to begin with. But it's a great option if you are looking for a way to reduce your costs on marketing while still getting in front of a targeted audience that goes beyond just your own audience. Then think about how you can repurpose that. Again, how can you reuse that webinar? Could you make it an on-demand webinar where you can run ads that drive targeted prospects into watching it? Can you repurpose it on your website? Can you use it in your email? Can you send it out to investors that are considering investing in your company? There's a lot of different ways that you can repurpose that content. So anytime you're investing time, effort, or dollars into any kind of tactic, you want to really think about how you can maximize it. The more you're spending, because this market is sometimes pay to play, the more you're spending, the more you want to maximize it because you really need to make those dollars go a little bit further. And the more you're spending, by and large, the more important the event is. So for example, if you're planning to attend health in October coming up, you should already be starting to work on your strategy for how you're going to pre-promote, promote at the event, and post-promote. For most of our clients, once that outline is created, it's pretty, health is one of the larger events. So once we have a large event strategy prepared, we can take that, we can put it in a spreadsheet, we can attach some pre-programmed dates to that so that we can take that then for the next event and we can pop that event date in and it pre-populates all of our due dates. We can delete anything that's not relevant if it's a smaller show. Any way that you can make that process easier on yourself so that you can automate and streamline is helpful. But that is one thing that I would certainly consider as you are planning your marketing for your big dollar spend events is how can I make this easier on myself for the next one? How can I simplify this process moving forward and not have to remember all of these ways that I'm going to maximize this event or this content and instead just make it automatic so that it becomes less work and less effort over time. I hope that's helpful for you today. I will be back next week with another awesome tip for health tech and healthcare, B2B healthcare companies. Give us a follow, like, subscribe if you would like to be notified when that comes out. Talk to you soon.